I'd like to introduce Andrew Seymour. He is our Business Development Manager for Azena, formerly Security and Safety Things. And Andrew visits us from Pittsburgh, and he is going to discuss cameras running third-party applications. Like, you have apps on your phones. He's going to talk about apps on a camera, which I think is absolutely amazing. Andrew is be located downstairs, but without further ado, please join me in welcoming Andrew from Azena.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. Everybody hear me okay? Yeah, it sounds like it's on. Yeah, appreciate that. So thanks, Rick. Over the next, half an hour or so, I'm going to walk through Azena and what we offer, which, as Rick alluded to, gives you the ability to put different applications on a camera and solve a variety of use cases. So if you're not familiar with Azena or Security and Safety Things, which was our former name that we went under, we are a Bosch spin-out. So we're fully owned by Bosch, but we're independent and operate separately. And we have currently 3 offices located globally, 2 in Europe, and then 1 in Pittsburgh. So as Rick mentioned, I'm out of our Pittsburgh office. And although we are relatively new to the security industry, we are co-located and now have a U.S. operation in Pittsburgh. We're co-located with the Bosch Research and Technology Center, and now have our own sort of separate entity, complete with demo rooms, and we're beginning to spin up our sales team and our technical support team in the United States. So after we've gone through everything that we have available to you, just keep in mind that myself and my technical counterpart Casey are downstairs, and we do have a dedicated US team here to help implement some of these solutions that we're going to go over. So as Rick mentioned, we are trying to do for security cameras what Google and Apple did for cell phones 10 or 15 years ago. So taking a purpose-driven device like a cell phone, right? It makes phone calls, sends text messages, but not much else, at least 10, 15 years ago. Google and Apple came in and built platforms for cell phones that allowed users to mix and match different applications to solve different problems with a corresponding app store. We're trying to do the exact same thing. So we have a platform, we have an application store, and we work with this common operating system, very similar to what you would see on a smartphone. So the idea here is that you're going to have a very flexible, future-proof solution where you can mix and match different applications as you need them. So if you're using an app and all of a sudden that problem that you're solving is no longer relevant, you simply delete the app. A new problem crops up, you simply add another app that solves that issue. So same flexibility you get on your smartphone, we are trying to bring that to security cameras. So what's the problem that we are trying to solve? I'm sure a lot of you folks are familiar with this. Within the security space, there is a ton of vendor lock, meaning that you might have a solution that solves, in this example, fire detection or maybe people counting or some other problem. And you have to have a very specific set of hardware, software requirements for this solution to work. And it's possible that you may have 3 solutions running in tandem in your facility, and none of them are talking to each other. So you have to go to multiple different spots to get the information you need to make smart business decisions, which can be quite challenging. So what we are trying to do, like I alluded to previously, is have a common operating system where you can mix and match different cameras based on the need, right? And then mix those with different applications that can live on one camera or multiple cameras and actually exchange data back and forth. So you're not siloing information anymore. You're able to have your occupancy detection and your fire detection communicate so you know, okay, there's a fire and there are this many people in the building. What's the next step, right? Just as an example. And then we can easily funnel this data and this information wherever it needs to go, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But the idea here is that we sort of bridge the gap between traditional security and VMSs and more modern IoT standards, for example, maybe sending data via MQTT. So we can take this data, funnel it all together, and serve it up in whatever means makes the most sense for your hypothetical use case. And the way we're accomplishing this is through an app store, which right now sits at just north of 90 apps, covering a variety of different use cases. And we also address different verticals, and I'll show you a quick tour of the App Store now, just to give you an idea of what this looks like and what can you sort of do with it. So the idea here, very similar to what you might utilize on a smartphone or tablet. So I simply navigate to our web page and open up our App Store, which should hopefully load momentarily here. There we go. So yeah, right now we're sitting at 101 apps. So one of the cool things about this platform is we are still relatively new. We've only been around for about a year and a half. So there are new apps almost every time I go and check out what's available. So now we're up to 101, covering a variety of different use cases. So if you look over here on the left, you can see we have it divvied up by specific use cases. So crowd management, retail store, and so on. And also by industry. So if there's something hyper-specific you're looking for, like airports, you can quickly click through to that and see what's available. And again, the idea here is that not only can you mix and match different applications, but you can also test different applications before you actually commit to buying them. So if there's two applications that claim to do the same thing, just like on your phone, you could try both, see which one's better, and then proceed with that for your ultimate solution. Most applications have a 30-day trial period, so you're not on the hook to pay anybody anything until you've actually proven it out and make sure that it works for you. But yeah, so once I find the app I want, I can purchase it and then add it to my camera and then have that solution and it's ready to go. So this is one of the key differentiators within the industry. There's nobody else who's doing this, an actual store where I can go and buy something today, put it on my camera, and have something up and running right away. So that's a brief tour of our actual app store. In a minute or two, I'm actually going to show you a demonstration of a few select applications just to get your brain juices flowing about what's actually possible. So again, just to drive this home, what we are doing here is building this common OS that runs across multiple different types of cameras. So you have this common baseline. You always know that if you're running our operating system, you get access to our store and the apps that are in it. We have a really easy to use development environment. So when we're reaching out to app developers and trying to bring them on board, it's all very well documented and is loosely based around Android. So most developers are going to easily be able to port their application over. We have a really easy way to deploy apps to cameras. So 1 camera, 100 cameras, 1,000 cameras, whatever you need to do. We have a very intuitive device management portal so you can scale up. And then, of course, what I just showed, the application store, which is this repository of different analytics that you can pick and choose from as you see fit. So in terms of data, I mentioned earlier that we sort of bridge the gap between traditional security and kind of this more modern idea of IoT devices. So what we're really trying to do is turn cameras into more of an IoT sensor. So it's still a camera, you're still looking at things, you can still obviously get that video stream if needed, but what we're really concerned with, especially with these IoT projects, is getting the metadata and then serving it up in a smart way. So we have ONVIF support from the traditional security perspective. We can interface with most VMSs, so BVMS being one of them, of course, and you're not going to upend your existing security infrastructure by using an Azena-compliant camera. However, we can provide additional value using some very robust integration tools that allow you to easily pull this data out to send to common IoT platforms, so like Microsoft Azure or something like that. And we can do that through either a RESTful API or by taking MQTT data, which if you're not familiar, MQTT is a very lightweight transmission protocol for IoT. It originally started in oil and natural gas because it's very low bandwidth. So you can, if you're in the middle of nowhere in Texas and cell reception's either impossible or very expensive, that's where MQTT came in to allow data to come out of these oil rigs. So now it's kind of been adopted within the IoT world as a very common, easy to implement standard. So that's what I'm talking about when we're going over things like that. In terms of hardware, we've got a number of options, all of which, well, all of them except for the bullet camera are downstairs. We have several of them hooked up running different applications, so feel free to stop down by our booth afterwards. We can show you more, go more in depth on an actual use case if you have something you want to explore. But from a hardware perspective, we have a lot of great choices depending on what your situation calls for. So with that, I'm going to jump over to a couple of demonstrations, again, just to show a little bit of our solution in action and kind of, hopefully inspire you to solve a problem that you aren't currently able to solve. So this first use case is Ppe Detection. And as we're sort of seeing here, this gentleman's wearing a hard hat and a high-vis vest. And this application is actually scanning to determine, well, if it would play, scanning to determine if he's actually wearing those items. So in this case he is, so we're getting 2 greens. And here if he takes off his helmet, you'll see we're getting a red box for the helmet. We get a notification for that missing helmet, but the missing vest is still not illuminated because he's got his jacket on. This is a very accurate app we have, very mature app. And again, the idea here is that if you're maybe in a manufacturing space or in a construction site, you can easily detect whether people are wearing the appropriate gear. And because we have these IoT integration tools, we can send that data maybe via text message to a foreman, right, who can go to that area where we detected the alarm and make sure everyone there is compliant with the rules and regulations of the space. The other thing to keep in mind is that most of these applications are highly modifiable, and we can easily go back to the developer and get changes made based on what you might need. So as an example, I have a customer who's in the semiconductor industry, and they wanted to have PPE detection, but for hairnets and beard nets. So they said, hey, do you have something like that? I noticed you have PPE. So we went to the developer, and they said, absolutely, we can make those modifications. We just need video footage. So we've got that, and the developer is now working on modifying this application to look for a different form of PPE. So it could be safety goggles, could be whatever it is that is relevant to your use case. So I guess part of why I'm showing these demos is not just to show you that it's possible, but also if there's something a problem that you have that's like vaguely similar to what we might be solving here, we can likely make a change to suit your need, right? So that's one use case, PPE detection. Another sort of interesting one is left luggage detection. So this could be used in a number of spaces, probably most notably like an airport or transit, subways, buses, what have you. And so what we're doing here is detecting that we have a left piece of luggage. It's going to show that it's unattended. And what it will also do, when it detects an unattended piece of luggage, it's going to trigger an alarm, which again you can send either to traditional VMSs or to something a little bit more modern. And it's also going to take a screenshot of the last 30 or so seconds of that left bag. So you'll see in a moment, if we detect an unattended bag, we're going to be able to see at least what the person looks like, right? Even if they're facing away from us, we can see, hey, it's a guy with a white shirt and blue pants or whatever the case may be. So we can track that individual down. And it also works quite well with multiple people in the frame. So here you can see multiple folks. There's a whole lot going on. One person's left their bag. This guy's still standing here. He leaves. And we still are able to say, yes, that bag is in fact unattended. And then I believe we're going to show here in a moment our alarm list. And if we go to that most recent alarm, we should see that, it's this guy with the white shirt and the blue pants who left his bag. And again, this is just general object detection, right? So it could be trained to do other things. So that idea of modifying applications, it could be something other than a suitcase, right? We're using very high-end AI algorithms that are running on a very powerful chipset as part of our operating system. So this is something where we can use this in a variety of different ways. And it works obviously in different lighting. That's what we're trying to show with this outdoor example. So next up I'll show this one, which is mask check, which is I suppose fairly relevant for the current times we're living in. This is sort of an interesting one, and I think is a good testament to what our App Store can do and what it's kind of designed to do in the industry. Obviously, before the pandemic hit, we did not have any mask detection apps, but several developers took it upon themselves shortly after the pandemic started to develop such technology. So as an example, folks in our retail, who are using our retail applications, were able to easily load mask detection apps onto their existing cameras. So now not only are they getting those retail analytics out of their solution, but they're also able to see if their customers are wearing masks. So in this case, this one actually is paired with a smart display, which tells you if you are wearing a mask or if you're not, to allow you into the room, or the building rather. You could pair this with like a door lock if you really wanted to, so that you're only able to go in when the mask is on. It'll also detect whether it's being worn properly and if the mask you're wearing is appropriate for the situation. So I can actually go in and say, I only want surgical masks, or I only want a homemade mask, whatever you'd like to do. So it can actually detect that to allow businesses, or maybe in the healthcare space, to be compliant with whatever rules and regulations might be in place as it pertains to masking, and a pretty user-friendly interface as well. So next up is seat occupancy, and you can use this in a couple different use cases. This video happens to show it in the context of public transit. So my understanding of this industry is today it's often sensors based around the seat that are being used to detect whether or not a seat is occupied. But we can do the same thing with vision. So you're essentially building in boxes where a seat exists, and this AI can actually detect if a person's sitting there or if it's just a bag or if it's a person lying across seats. You have a really nice way of understanding how full a train car is, a bus, whatever it is. And this could be used for a number of things. Maybe we're improving route efficiency. We know that, hey, bus 60 is full. We need to dispatch another bus to that route because there's way too many people on the existing bus we have running. Or same idea with trains. And here we're showing again, it doesn't detect that there's a bag there. So we know, hey, there's a free seat. Somebody's just putting their bag on that chair. So we can accommodate another person. And again, same idea here. Person's not sitting in the chair properly, has their bag up, but we're not throwing any alarms there. We're not showing those other seats as being occupied. So we know, hey, another passenger can sit there. The other potential use case here, and this is a slightly different application, is in the stadium space. So there's another version of this application that can kind of zoom out on an arena or a stadium, and you can actually plug in your seat numbers to, from this app into your ticketing system, so you know exactly what seats are filled. And if there's a filled seat that hasn't been sold, you can direct an usher to go down and solve that problem, so to speak. So again, just another idea of some of the capabilities we have baked in to this solution. Another one on kind of the smart city side of things that might be interesting. This is sort of a novel use case. This is a relatively new app, but it works quite well. Flood detection. So what we're drawing here is a boundary around a frequently flooded area that we want to be notified if that happens. We can quickly give it a name, set up a threshold for how flooded is acceptable, and then we'll be notified as soon as there is an overflow. So I could see this being very useful for municipalities, cities. I don't know if any of you have been to Pittsburgh, but it's very common in Pittsburgh. There's a big parking area right along the Monongahela River. It's called the Mon Wharf. It is frequently flooded. And I don't know how they're detecting whether or not it's flooded today. I assume there's a person who just goes down there and says, yep, it's flooded, and they say, hey, don't come down and park on the Mon Wharf. It's flooded. This would be a really nice way to solve that problem in a more streamlined, automated way. So you can see we're starting to get some red here because we're seeing some flooding. And this little flood warning image is sort of just serving as our temporary alert here, right? Letting us know, hey, yes, there is a flood condition in this space. Another one that's I think should be very interesting, especially given the current climate, is this visual feedback app. So I'm sure many of you have traveled into some of the larger airports in the US. You'll often be prompted at the end when you leave, hey, press this button if your experience was good or bad or neutral. Essentially, this application can do the exact same thing with vision. So now we're getting a checkbox on the thumbs up. So you can give it a thumbs up, a neutral response, or a thumbs down. The face up top is just anonymizing the face. It's not actually reading your expression. It's tied to the thumb. But the idea here is so once we see that little bar loading, we get the check, it's registering that as a positive response. And so that's actually going to be fed into their analytics engine, which will then show you, hey, where are we in terms of customer satisfaction with this space, whatever it may be. So this one's a little novel, but it actually works quite well. And here is where we can actually do something with this information, right? So it's fun, yeah, okay, we're interfacing with it, but how can I actually make an actionable decision on this? Well, you could set up some sort of alarm threshold where if we have so many negative responses, like in the context again of a bathroom, hey, send a janitor to whatever section of your facility that needs attention, right? So that's just one use case. But again, it's touchless, right? So in, again, this kind of post-COVID world where people are like a little more hesitant about handshaking and touching and all this, this is a nice way to sort of get the information you need in a very modern way without getting a ton of germs involved, right? This is a nice app for potentially, could be used for a number of things. This is fall detection. So you can see we've got an individual who's fallen. We have another person in the frame, so we're not getting thrown by that extra person. And we have a notification. So this could be used, obviously, I think the most obvious use case would be healthcare, right? Or elder care, something along those lines where someone falling down, yeah, is very important to know about. And again, we can send these alarms in a variety of different ways. But it could also be used in just general retail, any sort of business where liability could be a concern, right? If there's slip and fall situations, and we need to be alerted as quickly as possible, this is a really great way to solve that problem. And then in a similar vein to kind of the healthcare angle, we also have some dynamic privacy masking that we can apply here. So remember I talked earlier about how we can have multiple apps on the same camera? So we can have two apps solving kind of the same problem collaboratively if we want. So in this case, we have person, they're anonymizing the people. So if I was in a healthcare space, I wanted to know if somebody fell, but I don't want to violate their HIPAA rights, this could be a cool way to kind of solve two problems at once, right? So we don't know who the people are, we know they're there though, and if they fall, we can be notified of a fall. So multiple apps on the same camera, solving, kind of working together to solve a larger problem. And again, kind of in this healthcare space, one customer we're working with right now, so slip and fall, can we modify this app to solve another use case? The answer is yes. We're working with the developer right now to solve a left bed or falling out of bed detection situation. So if someone, rather than, hey, reactive, someone fell, it's, oop, someone is leaving their bed before they even fall, can we be notified? And then also, can we do some predictive analytics so we know that they're going to fall before it actually happens? And another one of our more mature apps involves retail analytics. So pretty common, right? You're in a retail environment. You want to see loss prevention is a huge deal, right? You want to know if someone's stealing from your store. We can easily take the cameras that you might be using, again, to sort of monitor the day-to-day in your store, and then take the metadata to help improve what's your business operations, improve profitability, and just learn more about where people are going within a space. So here you can see we have some dwell time built in. And then we can take this information and look at it over time to see like heat mapping, where are people going within an environment. So here we can see kind of a long form time lapse of this sort of heat mapping. I'll also say that a lot of these applications can be retrofitted to be used in non-retail use cases. So if it's just an area that you want to know, hey, where are people going over a period of time, it doesn't have to be a retail store, you could throw this in. Again, as long as there's a camera, we're good to go. And then you're seeing here we can get some routing information. So again, could just be layout efficiency in any sort of business. Doesn't necessarily have to be a store. So that is Azena in a nutshell. So essentially, it's very straightforward. You pick some cameras that you need, choose from our available apps, or come to us if there's something you want custom made, and then integrate into your systems. Very straightforward.
Yeah, a question regarding that one video you showed where the guy came in with the helmet and vest on and so forth.
Sure.
Is there an app to detect somebody carrying a handgun or a rifle?
There is, yes. So we had to sort of pick and choose what video we could show, but we do have gun detection apps right now. It is currently for handguns, but we could certainly, I would expect, adjust for like a long gun as well.
I'm assuming that would also come up as an alarm?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And then I've seen, we have some demo videos. If you stop by our booth, we can show you. We should be able to dig one up, but it shows a level of confidence as the weapon is being drawn. So it's not going to necessarily send an alarm just because it's coming right out. It's going to give it a 1 second until it fully detects that weapon.
Very good.
Any other question?
I have a question.
Sure.
I know you just discussed everything about the mask and everything. I'm not sure how this is, but what about due to, since we in this whole new COVID thing, will it detect heat or temperature if you're in a closed environment?
It's a good question. Yeah. So we are a platform. So hypothetically, could someone come in with a temperature sensor or a temperature scanning device and port that into our app store? Yes. As of today, we don't have any thermal cameras in our portfolio for this use case. It's not to say Bosch doesn't have thermal cameras, but for our platform, we don't currently. So it's not a no, but it's a not right this second.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hi. So a lot of the camera applications that I use are security-based,
Mm-hmm.
and I was wondering what security implications adding apps to the camera software would have. If it either called vulnerabilities or
Yeah, that's a good question. So I do have 2 slides here just because I expect there's usually going to be a question along these lines. Yeah, so we take cybersecurity very seriously. These cameras are designed to either live on the internet if you'd like, right? So certain applications have cloud components to them to make them, pretty dashboards, that sort of thing. But if you'd like, you can install an app just on the camera itself, and it can be totally walled off from the internet. As far as our overall solution goes, we regularly undergo third-party penetration tests to ensure that there's no backdoor, so white hat hackers trying to break into our solution and failing to do so, right? We also have a fairly rigorous check for app developers generally, so both from a business perspective and then also from the app itself. So when they submit it, it runs through a series of tests to ensure that there's no malware hiding underneath, right? Is it actually the application that it says it is? Is it doing what it's supposed to do, broadly speaking? And then there's no super admin, there's no like admin. Access. Unfortunately, some manufacturers do that. That's not what we're doing. We have pretty rigorous password requirements to get in. And then, again, similar thing with account abuse. We want to make sure that you can have very granular control within an account. So you have admins and users. Certain people can install apps, certain can't. So you still want to follow best practices that you would with anything, right? Like your email accounts or what have you as a business. But we do have a lot of customization available so that you can, feel comfortable with this solution.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Do you offer facial recognition?
So today, we do not have any facial recognition apps in our store. However, most of the people who do mask detection also do facial recognition. So I suppose if you had a use case, let us know. That's something where we can certainly reach out to a developer and have them port one of their more dedicated facial recognition apps onto our store. As of right now, if you wanted something today, the farthest we take that is gender, age, some more basic demographics. So the question is kind of along the idea of like, what are we doing? We have all these AI algorithms. We have to worry about cybersecurity. What are we doing with this data? Where is it going? So we try to really put that in the control of the people who are using our platform. So the data doesn't have to leave your cameras until you say it needs to go somewhere. From an AI perspective, these are all teachable algorithms. So when we're talking about, the analytics that are coming out of here, it's machine learning, right? It's computer vision machine learning. It's things that we can teach, we can modify, but in terms of ethics and things like that, we are a platform, and obviously if it's some sort of app developer that has questionable merits or questionable end game associated with what they're trying to do, we would not. Bosch has very strict rules, and because we are Bosch adjacent, we have to comply with whatever ethical concerns might pop up from a developer, let's say from China, trying to get us to do facial recognition for something nefarious. We would obviously put the kibosh on that. In terms of cybersecurity, like I said, we have fairly rigorous standards that we're adhering to on our end, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to, are you following a smart defense in depth approach, right? Cybersecurity is not just one single thing, it's having a variety of different walls in place so that no one compromise will destroy the entire system, right? So yes, we could be an internet-enabled device, and you certainly need to keep that in mind when you're having the conversation with IT. Hey, are you following best practices? Do you have your network segmented? Are your firewalls configured correctly, right? We're not going to make your network any more secure, but we're not going to make it any less secure either, generally speaking from a cybersecurity perspective.
What about the fee schedules?
Yeah, good question. So from a payment perspective, there are essentially it's fairly customizable based on what the app developer wants to do. So option one would be a flat license. So hey, per camera, it's X amount of dollars and it's yours. And you can actually move that specific license from one camera to another as needed. There are some of our more involved apps, like for example, one of our that retail suite that you saw. They have a reoccurring yearly fee because they host a lot of that data in the cloud, so you can serve it up in a pretty dashboard. So it just depends on the app and what they're doing. Some of them have these very elaborate cloud backends that are helping make the experience better. Some of them are, like for example, the PPE app. It's, hey, it's this much, and just, it's yours after you purchase it.
Is that a per camera cost?
It is, yes, correct. Now, the other thing I'll mention, though, is we've recently introduced a negotiation space, which allows integrators or whomever is deploying these cameras to directly interface with the app developer. So if I'm like somebody who wants to buy 1,000 versions of an app to go on cameras, we have a really nice way of interfacing with folks that made the app, so you can have a conversation about what pricing would look like. And then I guess a weird little aside, we can also do private applications. So for example, if like Walmart came to us and said, hey, we want a retail app that's just for us and Walmart associates and installers, we could do that as well. So it's only visible to folks within that account. So we have some control on the App Store side of things as well.
Does your web page have the specifications on the app, what camera models you can scroll up?
It does, yeah. So our website has all the information as far as cameras. More are coming every day. More apps are coming every day. And then, like I said, in the future, there will be, I would expect, many, many, many different types of cameras, again, because the idea here is that it's this underlying chipset that powers, and it's the same on every camera. So it doesn't matter if you have a MIC or an Autodome, they're running the same underlying hardware. You can install apps on them without thinking too hard about it. Very good. I'll be here kind of tearing down, and like I said, myself and my technical counterpart are downstairs, so feel free to stop by if there's something, a use case you want to discuss further, or if you want to see some more applications. We actually have cameras running downstairs. Thanks.